Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream. Today is Wednesday, January 5th. Shadowverse is what we're playing. I clicked on the first screen without even thinking about it that I hadn't started streaming, so I got either a pack or gold. Same old, same old. Like, really this whole launch screen and having to see this advertising at the beginning is much more for their benefit to advertise to you than it is for your benefit um, to actually get the rewards. We have 3 more days to get a private match done, so I'll either do that today on stream or off stream. Also a private match win, which isn't actually that hard if you can get into a private match. Otherwise, we have Portalcraft. I don't think I'm going to be playing Runecraft or Forestcraft. Portalcraft and Dragoncraft as what we should play. We probably even shouldn't bother to play ranked. We still are very much in the situation where there isn't a lot of news happening. So this stream shouldn't be that long. I'm still playing 2 3/4 to 3 hour episodes of Fallout 3, and getting cricks on my neck every time I do it. I really need to figure out a solution to that very quickly here. I'm trying to find a pillow that would work. The problem is, because the chair is lower, I put more cushions in the chair. That raised me up to fix one problem. Now the headrest, which was already kind of low to begin with, and only would have worked had I been deeply sunken into the chair. Now the headrest is hitting me in basically my shoulders. So I've got to figure out some fairly firm pillow or to create a new headrest, and I haven't figured that out yet. I'm also working a little bit slower this week, trying to get the Stranger Things Lego set put together. I've had it for a very long time, and this is well past the point to start doing that. And so every day I'm doing just one of 11 bags of Lego pieces, and in the very first bag, unless I am just completely mistaken, I think for the first time in my Lego experience, I've been given the wrong piece, because not only did I get an extra piece that I shouldn't have gotten, I'm missing a different piece, and it would be a different situation many times. Almost every set I build, I drop a piece, I lose a piece somewhere on the table, I just can't see it, and I spend way too much time looking for the pieces. What I really would need is a nice bright white placemat to build Lego on. That would be ideal, but I don't have something like that, and it'd have to be fairly big too. But every other time, and I probably have somewhere around 20,000 Lego pieces, so this is like 1 in 20,000 Lego pieces, that I really think they gave me the wrong piece. Which is fine. You can contact Lego and they'll send you a replacement. They don't care. It costs them less than a penny, I'm sure, to make any individual piece, and they, even if I have to pay for it, they'll charge me like 6 cents, maybe a dime, to get a replacement piece. It's not a deal. The bigger issue is I just want to finish the whole set to make sure there aren't any other mistakes. The way I understand Lego makes the different numbered mags and picks its pieces when it is creating the sets is based on weight, so that's why a extra piece would indicate that there was an actual mistake, because if it was just a missing piece, then they would have weighed the bag and it would have weighed too light. If it was an extra piece without one missing, it would weigh too heavy. The only way it would be within their tolerances of the weight is if there was something that weighed almost exactly the same or exactly the same added extra. And the extra piece is not one of the normal extra pieces, because Lego will give you an account for always giving you an extra 1x1 piece. So a 1x1 stud or anything really small, they will always give you an extra piece there, and that's accounted for. But this was a 4x1 brick, and I went over the instructions 5 different times. I went to the back and saw that only one of the 4x1 bricks was ever supposed to be used in the entire set. So the fact that I was given 2 pretty much guarantees that I'm on the right path, thinking that that was a mistake. It is, I would also say, a little bit weird to have to do the Stranger Things Lego set at this point, because Stranger Things is kind of dead and over, and it doesn't have that long-lasting longevity to it that you would kind of hope for Lego sets, compared to like the Sonic Lego set, where if you get Sonic on a shelf, people are going to recognize Sonic. If you get Mario on the shelf, people are going to recognize Mario. Stranger Things, no. I imagine a lot of people are going to go, what's that? Like, and I guess there might be an argument to disassembling it and using it, doing a rebuild with the pieces, or modifying it heavily to make it look more like a Halloween house or a haunted house or something like that. Because the Stranger Things house has this weird concept that Lego's never done before or since, where there's literally an upside down house hanging, mirroring the right side up house that is creepier and darker and spookier, which makes sense if you've seen Stranger Things, and absolutely doesn't make sense any other way. As far as Fallout 3 and the accountability section, I'm still just playing the game. There's a couple of places that I have marked on my map that I haven't visited, but it also feels like there's kind of a still very large percentage of locations that I haven't found. There's just a lot of nothing, frankly. And honestly, I would prefer that the nothing have fast travel locations and markers on the map. But there are definitely a lot of places where you run into something and there's just nothing to it, because it's either connected to the main story or it's connected to some quest I just haven't started. There aren't really that many quests left. So I just have to really wonder if the main story doesn't have another 10 or 12 hours of content around it. And I've gotten tons of power armor and still can't use power armor, so I really think that they should have just forced you to do the main story as a tutorialization. There's a lot of perks, which really the perks are the only thing that make a great argument towards playing the game potentially a second time is that you could start with a different special stats, and those different special stats would then unlock different perks. But I also kind of have to question if you just wouldn't be better off using a walkthrough and getting 90% of the perks that are good. Every time I level up, I struggle to find a perk that's actually of any value. At this rate, I'm almost certainly going to have 100% on most of all the skills, even if the special is low, but the special has to be higher in certain perception, charisma, ability, agility in particular, for me to unlock certain perks, and I just don't have it that high. And nothing changes your special other than finding a bobblehead, which increases it by 1, which is just not enough. And then you run to a place and you do something that feels like it's a fairly unique experience, and you don't get rewarded by changing something big like the special. You get rewarded by finding a mini nuke or a book that raises your skills by 2. I'm finding plenty of books that don't really matter anymore because my skills are already up to 100. And for some skills like lockpicking, for instance, which I've completely run out of bobby pins now too, and I had to spend probably an hour combined already just saving, loading, saving, and loading, trying to force locks open. Even though my lockpicking skills are at 100, the bobby pins still break very easily. And it's taken me 2 playthroughs and many, many years to realize that the bobby pin lockpicking system is exactly the same as the computer hacking system, in that you get 3 tries and then you should just hit B and cancel out and try again. But it just visually depicts it so differently that it never even occurred to me that it's giving you 3 tries. But I'm not even 100% sure it's really 3 tries. It might be you get 2 tries and that's it. But there are definitely not enough lockpicks, and there's no engine or programming that's looking at how many lockpicks I've broken and making me find more. Which that would be what you would want a modern game to do, is to take a look at how many bobby pins you have used. Is this the artifact follower? No. And then have you find more. But it doesn't ever care that you're out of bobby pins. I half wonder if there actually are bobby pins on the ground and I just can't see them because they're way too small. I bet that is the case in at least some small places, since every other item has a 3D model and shows up in the real world. Arguably in Fallout 3, if you didn't have to search inside of anything and everything was just present in the overworld, it would be a much better experience. Because then you could just look at the shelves and say, alright, there's a bunch of junk on this shelves. I know what this stuff looks like. Also, you would want it highlighted, or at least an accessibility option to highlight items so you can actually see them and they stand out from the background. But yeah, if you could just see those things in the real world, pick them up when it's necessary, that would be a much better experience. I have over 10,000 caps and nothing to spend them on. So unless there was some final in-game like win solution where you can just bribe somebody with a massive amount of caps. That system, like so many systems in Fallout 3, has just collapsed, and all the surface level razzmatazz on it has been removed to show that it's not really a balanced system, not for the amount of time they want you to play with it. And this is true for most games. If you just kept playing a game over and over again, you'd eventually figure out that it's all trickery and it's all theater, and that the systems really cannot work forever. You see that in things like StarCraft too. It's like you can break almost any AI or any level by just mining all the resources that are on the map, or building way too many troops. Like at a certain point, it just can't go any further. And while the systems helped Fallout 3 get as far as it did, it really fails to make a good narrative storyline at all. Like I'm still going to places and searching dungeons for no reason, grinding for XP. It's still incredibly difficult to get the XP. I'm at like level 18, level 19 maybe of 22, which is fine because I've mostly done everything in the main game, and then the DLC bumped it up to level 30. But I'm only that high because I've ground out and went to every location I could find. Like I'll find entire dungeons and clean them out, and there's just nothing there. There's no reason for me to even done it. The only thing that would make any sense is if you're just playing your character as somebody who is literally trying to kill all the bad guys in the entire map, which in this game, in Fallout 3, may actually be possible. I did find what I think is called the Irradiated Sea, a region that just has a huge amount of radiation. I was expecting to see huge amounts of radiation to north, south, east, and west of the maps just to keep you from going past the point, but oddly, it isn't the case. You can literally just walk to the north part of the map, and it just says you can't go any further in that direction. And there's really no explanation or reasoning for it at all. There's no physical barriers, where Skyrim did a much better job of that. In fact, a lot of stuff that I see in Skyrim were major improvements compared to Fallout 3. That being said, Skyrim is pretty old too, and it still had flaws. I could definitely see a remake having come out even a couple years after Skyrim originally came out of Fallout 3, to have dragon-like wandering enemies, to better improve the storyline and breadcrumbing, so that when you go to a place, there's an actual hint as to another quest somewhere else. You see a considerably higher amount of dungeons and an improvement in dungeons in Skyrim, where when you finish a dungeon, you're almost always given in a Skyrim dungeon a very big reward that feels very big, and you're given a shortcut out of that dungeon through a trapdoor. There's basically no trapdoors in Fallout 3. So you'll go through an area and then you'll just have to backtrack. I think, even though there's still a lot of junk in Skyrim, I think there's probably at least 20% fewer varieties of junk items in Skyrim compared to Fallout 3, which is a good thing.
I see.
The visual palette in Skyrim is way more colorful and way better looking than Fallout 3, which is just a huge
enveloped in serenity.
brown mess. Except for in the top left section where I've been playing mostly for the past couple episodes. Like, the top left section obviously was made by a different group of people, because there they have spotted some of the overworld with these red rusty metal lean-tos as places that usually have a workbench, or places that usually have a bed to sleep on. The game having so many beds makes no sense. Even if you were playing in survival mode, you're not going to get any kind of detriment, I think. I don't think there's any detriment if you just never slept. And it seems kind of ridiculous to try and force so many people to sleep to get the well-rested bonus to get XP, because the game gives such a small amount of XP. And I don't think anything really triggers when you are asleep. I don't think a single quest triggers when you're asleep, whereas in Skyrim there was a couple of quests that would trigger if you slept, but you still really had no reason to sleep. The whole sleeping mechanism is a great example of them focusing on making a system instead of just writing storyline. There's also spray paint graffiti in the top left section done by raiders that is really missing everywhere else in the map, as far as I've seen. Probably in part because the top left section of the map is where they're trying to say most of the raiders live, even though you see raiders all over the place in the map. And they don't really give any characterization to the raiders in general, because you have they're all in the same outfits, they're all killing and cannibalizing people. They're all immediately hostile to you and attack you on sight. So there's a real lack of like consistency there, where it would kind of make more sense if the raiders were using ham radios that we see all over the map and haven't done anything with. I don't think that was actually programmed to do anything. It would make a lot more sense if they were saying they were in communication and working together and coordinating raids from several different bases, and that there would be a quest potentially to go and kill all the raiders and clean out each of their bases. Of course, if you're playing as a bad guy, you might have assumed that there would have been a way to really join the raiders, and they would have at least one home base where you could put all your stuff. But there's literally only 2 home bases, I think, in the entire game, which is Megaton and Tenpenny Tower, and you can only get one. Let's see. Do I have anything else to talk about though, as far as the accountability section? Not really. I tried to change the programming a little bit, and I'll hope to see if that works. But I just wanted a barrier between the fall list games and the new games that came out, because it just transitioning to fall list games is a little bit jarring. But now with this new macro program, I shouldn't call it macro. It actually has logic in it. It's a program. Like, the setup for streaming is a lot less. I still kind of need to scroll down my main Twitter feed just to see some random announcements, but the vast majority of the work is just automatically done for me. Plus, that means that when I see an article, it will be completely new to me, as I won't have even seen the title.
Speed boost. Sleep. We retreat.
Alright, so here we have Major Nelson retweeted this. Xbox for Halo has partnered with a fingernail color company, which this is girlsunited.essence.com. So it's OPI. These are Xbox and spells nail liqueurs. 12 shades. Let's see. I guess it's not just Halo, it's just Xbox in general. Can't Control Me, You Had Me at Halo, Sage Simulation, Heart and Console. This is interesting, certainly. I think there is a slight increase in the number of younger, like high school, middle school boys that wear nail polish too. And frankly, for as dirty as some people's fingernails are, under their fingernails, taking some pride in that might be a good move and might work very well. I don't know if this hand has vitiligo or if that's supposed to be soap, but it kind of looks like vitiligo, which is white patches on typically darker skin. But yeah, this clearly is mostly focused on girls, which, yeah, I think that's probably a good outreach. It is still kind of the girly thought that girls need to be specifically advertised to, and that they're getting the Barbie games and the horse riding games. But at least in this case, it is an example of them not really pandering as much as we've seen in previous generations. But it is also worth mentioning that they are coming out with controllers to match these nail things. And that's where the real sale here is that being able to give a nicer looking controllers, which frankly, compared to the black, I would prefer this blue. Maybe not this hot pink, that's a little rough on the eyes, but the lavender is fine too. This is much more colorful and nice looking than a standard black controller. So yeah, it's nice to see different options of controllers. It's nice to potentially have some that would be in the color palette that a lot of girls even today have been told to appreciate more of. There still is major problems with parenting where parents of today were raised where girls liked pink and boys liked blue, in that general idea. And whether they consciously or just unconsciously are doing it, they pass that along generation to generation. Because it does take a lot of energy and a lot of conscious effort to remove gender bias and gender assumptions from your thought process in particular.
Not with everyone around me.
I think pretty much anybody who knows a parent that has a male and a female child pretty much notices that very quickly. Like before the child is really even conscious, they will do gender reveal parties with certain colors. They will put different hair bows on the bald heads of babies if they're a girl. They will dress the babies in pink. It's like before they are even conscious of this, there is this message that intentionally or unintentionally is getting sent that girls and boys should be treated differently, when in almost every situation I would argue they really shouldn't be treated that differently. Moving on, PlayStation has released a VR2 and a PlayStation VR2 Sense controller. This PlayStation blog needs some cleanup, clearly. Let's see if we can start there and see what that looks like. Yeah, that works there. It's maybe a little bit surprising, but probably not too surprising there that would happen. It was either going to certainly be a case where it was definitely either going to be a case where they were going to have to either just abandon VR or put out the hardware, and I'm not really sure that they aren't really just kind of abandoning VR at a certain level anyways by putting out this stuff, because it really hasn't been a particularly good year for VR in the past year, as much as it hasn't been really a particularly good year for anything. But yeah, Steam came out with like the top 100 games, and Giant Bomb was talking about that. Giant Bomb kind of not even making content until just yesterday. I was like, oh, what is going on with Giant Bomb? And they're really dropping the ball as far as potentially.
Oh, are you in need of medicine?
They're really dropping the ball as far as potentially actually covering. Yeah, this is one of these ones where you can't get rid of the picture. The Game of the Year content, people really wanted that Game of the Year stuff to happen at the end of the year with Giant Bomb, even though they said they weren't going to do it. There might be an argument that most of the people that are going to get a VR game, particularly on Steam, are still just going to get Half-Life Alyx, and that's why games like Half-Life Alyx were still the top sellers, is because they were safe and established in the top like 10 games you would recommend to people. But we really should have seen something come out, and I've been looking at nearly every game that came out this year, and it's been very, very few VR games, and I don't think a single one worth mentioning. So I would argue that VR has never really succeeded. It's been this bad product.
I'm coming for you.
Like CES is happening right now, and TCL is going to try and come out with a set of glasses that you could watch TV with or plug your phone into, and that looks kind of interesting, but I hardly would call that virtual reality as much as it's just a monitor.
Speed boost.
But yeah.
Begin.
I don't think on PC VR has a big enough following base. I don't think Sony has has enough fan base at this point to make VR succeed. I would heavily suspect that these OLEDs screens and all of these had been ordered 6 months to a year earlier, if not more than that, and they just needed to put this out so that they didn't have the products sitting in a warehouse as an overwrite. They're not even really showing pictures here in this article, like no pictures at all, which is very weird, and maybe that's because this is just directly from the PlayStation blog. Remember, this is also specifically for the PlayStation 5, which means you'd have to get a PlayStation 5. And I would have to just assume that they announced it after Christmas because they didn't want the obvious messaging to come out where people said, like, what's the point of announcing an accessory for a console that nobody can get?
This little hex is payback.
I'd kind of like to see it succeed, but I kind of wouldn't care if it failed either. Let's see.
This little hex is payback.
Ryan Watt, who is the head of gaming YouTube, for some reason had changed his icon or glitched or something. He just changed back. He's still putting out kind of advertisements that saying gaming on YouTube is succeeding when it really isn't. One of the things that's happening in the meta, as far as what I've heard, is that on Twitch people are just straight up watching MasterChef and giving very, very minimal commentary, not really transformative at all, where frankly that's been allowed quite a bit on Twitch anyways, where there's just been very little transformative actions being taken on copyrighted things. But the fact that it's been so successful really just highlights the problem with, I hate to say consumer training. It's a nasty, cynical phrase to use, but it's probably the right one to do. We have established an expectation, content creators have, of which I guess I have to include myself. We've established an expectation that it's okay to just show like all the cutscenes or gameplay of a game with no commentary, and that has succeeded way more than somebody who is spending a lot of time editing it out, which is not me. I do long plays. I still am showing 100% of the gameplay, but I do try to make constant, incessant, and hopefully good critical comments throughout it. So nobody should be coming to my footage to just see a no commentary gameplay footage of any game. If they want that, they could go to my videos and they could mute it. That's fine. But I want people coming to my videos, and every content creator should want people coming to their videos to actually see the part that content creator is adding to it, not just as a replacement for a video game. And we've seen this on YouTube too, where people are doing reaction videos, and it's just like, yeah, that's interesting. They literally are not saying anything substantive at all. But that's been allowed to, I think, fester and grow a lot more in Twitch than YouTube, because YouTube's content ID system, at least at some level, actually does try to protect content copyright holders enough that they will take the monetization or takedown videos that are just full uploads. There's still a lot of that in TV though, like tons of TV shows that are on YouTube, and I assume they're not supposed to be on YouTube. And I'm not innocent on watching an occasional Taskmaster episode, or I've been watching on a Mitchell and Webb peep show, but on YouTube, and I assume all of that shouldn't be on there. But at a certain point, I also don't mind if I'm screwing over the UK's TV systems, because the UK's TV systems don't have a good way to see those videos. Even if you try to get BritBox, I don't think you would be able to see everything. Or BBC America, you definitely can't see everything through having that channel. But yeah.
This invention could be my claim to fame.
I would say content creators need to be real careful, because the Japanese already assume that everything is piracy. They've always assumed everything is piracy well before even the internet existed. And so I could certainly see a lot of even more of the Japanese video game developers coming down hard and just trying to stop all footage air on Twitch and YouTube and other streaming platforms, much like how the anime industry pretty much does that. Moving on, the Harvester Games developer and publisher of the Cat Lady has a new game called Burnhouse Lake, which it definitely looks like the Cat Lady more than even Lorelei and the first game, which I forget the name of, which I'll put that on the follow list because I love the Cat Lady, but we are getting to the point where yeah, Downfall was originally the first game, and then they remade it, so it was like the Cat Lady, then a prequel of Downfall, and then Lorelei. I found both Downfall and Lorelei a little less interesting than the Cat Lady. I kind of wonder if I wasn't just in a specific mental mood when I played the Cat Lady, but I think the Cat Lady is just kind of better. What I'd like to see is on this is, because it's not like they're changing much. They're comparing it to like Telltale Walking Dead, which is interesting. What I'd like to see is controller support, full controller support. Here we are, because the first Cat Lady didn't have that. But it also does not really look like much has changed. They kind of need to go in a different direction, and do something different, because they're spinning their heels. The Devil Came Through Here trilogy is what the whole 3 games are called, which is kind of a terrible name. And then you look at the other games they have, and I don't even know what Dark Games and Adventure Games is, if this isn't another bundle. Actually, I should ask this question. Yeah, buying this bundle for $5 would just get the soundtracks, which I'd almost be willing to do that. It's definitely a different time also now compared to when the Cat Lady came out. So it's kind of harder to decide to potentially play a game here. This wouldn't be a terrible bundle either, because this is several other games from other developers.
May happiness be with you.
But yeah, with the whole pandemic and just global depression in general increasing, covering a game like that feels a little different. YouTube Creators is pushing YouTube Grand Connect, which is something I forgot even existed. You can get paid to include content by advertisers in your videos, so just baked in ads, which, I mean, or product placement. Maybe product placement is acceptable, whereas it used to be the rule that baked in ads were not allowed on YouTube because YouTube wanted to be the sole controller of ads on things on YouTube, and basically act as a monopoly. Now, sponsored content and ads like that would be baked in ads, certainly, and they've never actually taken any steps to prevent that, but it is kind of odd that that they even tried to, in the rules, say not to have that, because it really is monopolistic, and that's all YouTube really is trying to be, is a monopoly that in the advertising sector. Alright. So I ran the macro a couple times, so this is some fall list games that we need to look at. Just Dial Ready is rated very positively. It's probably not a game I actually want to play, though. It's just kind of a jokey old people fighting each other, killing each other. Old people mayhem sandbox is what it is. And I think in general, mayhem sandboxes are just going to be a no-go. Curve Digital, I think, has some games behind it. I recognize the name. But yeah. There's not a real challenge here. It almost... See, if you had like a skating game or something... The guy's peeing in the... if you had a skating game and they wanted you to do a little mayhem, that would be one thing. This is Human Fall Flat. I didn't even know I own that game. See, I Am Fish is kind of more of a more light-hearted look on that. Ember, I might consider. There's probably very little reason to play something like Peaky Blinders Mastermind at this point, because Peaky Blinders as a TV show, I think, has long since been missing, been over. Smoke and Sacrifice, For the King, Bomber Crew. Yep, I think someone gifted me that, and I never got around to playing it. Which, yeah, I've been real bad about that. Like, I really overpromised. That was probably one of the worst mistakes I've done with my channel, is the implication or promise of actually covering games if they were gifted to me. Like, that did not happen with 100% accuracy. I did cover a lot of games that were gifted to me, and I really haven't even had that many games gifted to me, but yeah, I'm glad I don't make that promise anymore. I still ask people to gift me gift cards or games on Steam, but it ends at that. Whether I cover it or not is going to be up to just my schedule and how much I really want to play those games. And I kind of needed to always have that to be the rule, because last thing I need to do is eliminate my momentum or eliminate my enjoyment of playing video games because somebody gives me a whole bunch of games that I just happen to not enjoy. Somebody could really have screwed me over if I stuck to that rule by giving me a whole bunch of games that are just awful and that I wouldn't want to play. Like, if you had just if somebody had gifted me like all of the Battlefield games, I probably would have lit them and not really covered them, because I don't really want to play all the Battlefield games. Here we have one that's just barely over 30, Juro Jensky. So let's give that a little bit more time. Here we have Jurassic World Evolution, which is mostly positive. It's single player only, which is interesting. It's a dinosaur building strategy game. I kind of feel like there's a reason why you would want to do this. This looks pretty. It may not be that big of a game compared to something like SimCity. So I'll put that on the wish list. But in all honesty, this might also be one of those games where from 10 feet away, I'm just not able to read the text. And because I'm not able to read the text, I'm not really able to play the game, which is exactly what happened the last time I tried to play a SimCity type game.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
But yeah, there's definitely a thought to get a monitor a lot closer to my face. Like, it doesn't have to be anything but a 1080p monitor, but a real computer monitor, so my eyesight can actually read things. Junkyard Simulator sucks. Sucks that this is mixed, because I really wanted this game to succeed, but it's in early access, and I feel like at this point nothing would save it. There's just far too many reviews for them to potentially come out of early access and make it work well. So my only real hope would be that somebody else makes something like Junkyard Simulator, which I guess would be something like Junkyard Simulator 2022, and just kind of start over from scratch.
Begin.
This little hex's payback.
Here we have a game called Junk Punk, which is still early access, so we'll give it some more time. We have a game that needs more time. Here we have something that looks more like a kid-friendly point-and-click adventure game, but it's just not going to have any relevancy. Like, this came out in February of 2020, and it has 6 reviews. So, yeah. There is also, I think, a factor here that you spend even $4 on a game like this for a kid. Why are you trying to get your 9-year-old kid, which would be about the age that a game like that would probably be for? Like, why are you trying to get them into PC gaming instead of console gaming? Like, it still makes a lot of sense to give a Switch to a kid instead of giving them a PC. Even if you want them to be a PC gamer later in life, you should still start them off with console, so you have that easier family lockdown and tight controls and just a better access to better kids games. If you started off kids playing these unrecognizable, mediocre at best kids games on Steam, they probably wouldn't even like video games by the time they're that edgy 12-year-old that you might then have them get their first PC and start, or gaming PC. I don't know, you might have a PC, give a kid a PC for school a lot earlier, but there is even arguments in the idea of having the first PC that a kid has be solely focused on doing schoolwork or homework, and not installing any games on it to start with. Here we have another game that needs more time. Here we have one called Jung's Labyrinth,
I'm coming
which
for you.
is tagged as a walking simulator exploration game. Psychological.
Wager your soul. I am Sunday you. I am Sunday.
This probably is an asset flip game, I would guess, but it's oddly 70% positive. Let's go to the reviews. You can play it in VR, it says. Although they don't have it set up. This is a novel concept and you're interested in learning more about Jung, then it's a very creative presentation that provides a fun way to explore the topic. They have packed in a lot of psychology and philosophy, as well as personalized archetypes, quotes from C.G. Jung, and presented intermittently. Outside of the educational value, I'm not sure I'd recommend this game. You navigate through a maze and look through doorways to rooms. In between you find recordings about Jung. The maze is truly a labyrinth with many twists and turns and lots of dead ends. Much of it looks the same, so finding a point of reference is tricky. First maze was uneventful, the second added traps easily to jump over, and spiders not so easy to evade and deadly. For me, this ended the fun factor. The payoff for finding another room did not outweigh the irritation of being killed by spiders and restarting at the beginning of the chapter.
What potential does mankind have? Sleep. You're the defective ones.
Yeah. Looking at that review and looking at the visuals here and it feeling like it is probably at least 50% asset flippy, I think I have to say no. Also, I have no idea who C.G. Jung is. I assume this is probably a more Eastern philosopher, but he's not even one that I recognize.
And I might let you live.
Yeah. It definitely feels like this is almost a vertical slice or a demo to show what a game developer thinks they can do. But yeah, pretty much as soon as you are adding a labyrinth and adding spiders, that does give you the feeling that you're really not trying to make a good game. Just looking at this entire video, yeah, I think we can say no to that. You also have the incredibly overbearing fact that there's just a ton of games, so if something even is slightly off, there's no reason for it to be on the wish list. Like, there's plenty of other walking simulators, plenty of other maze games if you want to try and find one that's good. Here we have another game that needs more time. And then Jump Force. I don't know why I was specifically putting Jump Force on the fall list at this point.
Don't underestimate me.
Yeah, there's no reason for Jump Force to be on the fall list anymore because they've given up on supporting Jump Force. Plus, Jump Force, Shonen Jump, manga characters fighting each other, while an interesting idea, is something that would really have had to have been embraced and supported. You can see this is at 73% popularity as far as positive reviews, when really this is a game that should be up in the 80s and 90s. When you have like characters like Yu-Gi-Oh and Naruto and Luffy from One Piece. Like, these are really, really popular characters, and if the fandom of reading these mangas or watching the animes on them, if they really cared and if they really wanted a video game here, they would have shown up in force. Now, arguably, this is a case where maybe anime fans just don't play video games as much as people think. That could be the case, certainly. It could be that there is just, for the very niche audience compared to video gamers, like, I'd imagine there's 20 video game fans out there for every one anime fan, and a lot of overlap where people that play video games like anime, whereas not so many people that like anime play video games. And I could certainly see that too. As a former major fan of anime myself, I don't think I want to play a video game of too many of the anime shows I watched. Yeah. Because for the most part, it would just be fighting animes. And I would rather just see the custom animation of the fight scenes in an anime, or even drawn on a manga, in a comic book form, versus scripted procedural animations where the blows don't quite connect, or it doesn't look quite as cool as just hand drawing it. Like, undoubtedly, custom, bespoke, hand-drawn animation will always beat computerized procedural animation that has to be inside of a video game engine. Even when you see video games turned into anime or animated movies, the animated movies look better most of the time, even though they're fairly low budget. It's kind of the exact opposite scenario when they make something live action. Moving on, PlayStation Now games have been added. I think we may have already talked about this. So this probably is just the overlap article from Video Games Chronicles. Let's see, GTA Trilogy has already dropped out of the UK top 20 40 weeks after release. Despite criticism, Square Enix's NFT and blockchain pledge caused a price surge, which definitely you can see the difference there between investors who are frankly just insanely greedy monsters and better when not described as human beings at all, because that is just such a ridiculous thought that nobody has any kind of foresight, and this has always been the case. Investors never look ahead more than a quarter, so as long as you can make more profit now, they don't care if it potentially ruins long-term profit potential gain. They don't care if it causes a deep distrust in the industry. They just want to suck as much more money out of the economy as possible, or out of a company, or out of the consumer as possible.
This isn't your run-of-the-mill spec.
And at a certain point, I can't fully argue with somebody who would believe that we have hit just such a point of late-stage capitalism where investors, which represent mostly rich people, are just trying to get the last few bits of value out of the economy before a huge collapse happens, and we just start to see tons of businesses going out of business, and just a big collapse, much bigger than
I will
just
never
like
forgive
a
you.
specific sector collapse, like the housing market collapse, but more just like a full-on all confidence in all companies is going to potentially collapse. And let's face it, rich people are older, so they can just
Allow me to join.
live off
This match is mine.
the money they already have,
I am a match
whereas
for 100 soldiers.
lower class, upper lower class people, there really is no middle class in the United States, will starve as much as the lowest of the low class. If anything, the lowest of the low class that have nothing in the market might do slightly better. They just won't lose anything because they have nothing to lose. Anyways, moving on. January's free Amazon Prime games includes Jedi Fallen Order. I tried the Origin Plus code on Steam. It didn't work. I didn't really think it would, but it would have been nice. I'm not sure if there's any of the more individual companies, services like Origin or Uplay that lets you activate it on Steam that way. I think you have to kind of buy it on Steam and then it gives you a Uplay code in that singular direction, not the direction backwards. Okay.
Speed boost. Accept harmony.
Okay. Hit that one. Hit that one. Hit that one.
Extendo.
Hit that one. And lose. Yeah, I don't think there's much to say there. We had already looked at all of that. A lot of this is just Video Game Chronicles articles catching up. Either that or my macro messed up and these are all old articles. Take note that unless I have blocked it here, yeah, I have blocked the date. I probably shouldn't do that. So it's gonna kind of suck. But I guess we'll just leave it since that does look nicer. So yeah, Video Games Chronicles, back to the office, back to working, so they're covering things. Riot Games agrees to pay $100 million. They previously agreed to pay 10 times less. Splitgate's PlayStation version is more popular after Halo Infinite's release, dev claims. In the long run, Halo and Splitgate will help each other out, which is weird because I have no idea what Splitgate is. It doesn't seem to me like Splitgate has anything to do with Halo, and they literally have just put out a article to steal some of the thunder from Halo. Now, looking at Splitgate, it definitely feels like this is a Halo/Portal clone. Yeah, I think I recognize this game. But yeah, that's definitely a different offering, certainly, when you're running around with portal guns. And it's really a smack in the face of Valve for not taking their portal technology and making a game like that. But I don't think any serious hardcore Halo fans would have wanted portals added to the game, changing how it plays. I think Halo fans in particular want Halo to feel very much like the Halo they remember, and changing the controls, they've done that before and people didn't like it.
I bring unto you serenity.
This one's for my
There is
family.
going to definitely be issues with remakes if there is an actual GoldenEye 64 remake that comes out. That is going to be one of those primary games that where the controls are going to feel very wrong unless they remake it and put the new controls in it that most shooters have, and then that might feel a little wrong. On top of which, at least Giant Bomb is putting out the interesting theory that
Beyond the clouds.
it really isn't, if you were going to remake GoldenEye 64, it really is highly unlikely that it would just be a single player split screen couch co-op game like it was for the Nintendo 64. Almost certainly it would be a online game with online multiplayer, which is a slightly different experience. Also,
Place to land.
if it's going to be online, there's a decent chance that there would be microtransactions or DLC or just cosmetics or things like that. And I don't know if GoldenEye 64 really could stand up if it did have a lot of microtransactions and cosmetics. I don't know what else you could add to that game
Perfect place to land.
that would make sense before you're just doing something like Fortnite, where you're just adding anything and everything together. Yeah, it probably would be smarter if they did remake it, barely put any multiplayer on it, didn't even have dedicated servers for the multiplayer, and sold the game fairly cheaply. So people with nostalgia could always go back and play it, but they don't have to invest a whole bunch of effort into making out something more than it really needs to be.
Perfect place to land.
Let's see.
Booster Stargazer to the cosmos and beyond. Begin. Omitikutli X Universe first.
Okay, that should win for us. Video Game Chronicles January's Xbox Game Pass titles includes Mass Effect Legendary Edition plus Outer Wilds, Spelunky 2, The Pedestrian, Gorogoa, Olija, Ember, and the Anacrusis. Pedestrian is kind of interesting because that's basically a brand new game, but I guess that's really just what's happening here. And this is just a trailer for Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Mass Effect is another series that could really do with a remake and a bridged experience.
Universe first.
You're a solid fighter.
I'm getting a lot of cards from these victory reward chests, which is probably nice. I assume they're skins and not just random cards, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is just that they've gotten kind of cheap and they're giving you just random cards of no real value. We need one more Portalcraft victory, and that'll get 2 of the daily quests done today. January's PlayStation Plus games are now available to claim. You can get Deep Rock Galactic, Dirt 5, or Persona 5 Strikers. Death Stranding's Director's Cut is officially coming to PC in the spring of 2022. It has a Steam page, which definitely makes an argument to not buy the original version of the game and only play the Director's Cut. Honestly, I assume the Director's Cut adjusts a lot for the fact that there isn't a lot of other people on the servers playing, and that game only really worked if you were playing it during the launch window. I still don't think there's a huge reason to play Death Stranding, particularly if we see Kojima never really return to the Death Stranding universe, which is very possible, and it is just this side story that doesn't really have a high level of importance to it. In a lot of ways, the Indigo Fahrenheit company, yeah, that's a company. That's the name of the game I'm thinking of. Like they have that same problem where they made Indigo Fahrenheit, and they've made 3 or 4 standalone, highly narrative games, and there's basically nothing else you can say about them. Like they're games you probably like. Heavy Rain is another one. You would want to play them, but because they don't connect to anything, because they're not that impactful to society, they're always in kind of a mushy middle. It's not like they're so bad they're good. It's not like they're so good that they should be covered even if they're not relatively known. They don't continue. It is a sad statement that almost every game has to be designed and developed to be a continuously running series or trilogy, but it's kind of true. If Mario 64 even had come out and there had never been any other Mario game before or after that point, I think a lot of people would have a lot harder time justifying Mario 64 as being a game that's relevant and worth playing. Let's see. Let's see. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says a new PlayStation patent describes a system for coaching players for users who fall below a skill threshold. The fact that they're patenting all this stuff is kind of ridiculous. Like, you can't give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're patenting things so that they can then release the patent for everyone to use license free. That if that was really happening, then they would make a much bigger deal about it. Like, and it's kind of ridiculous that patent wars are still happening. Patents in general suck and don't make anywhere as much logical sense as they should. Particularly when you think of video games, because patents were originally supposed to be methods for building better engines, basically, and you had to send miniature models that worked to the patent office to prove that your patent had any value at all, and what it was originally established for has now been subverted into just big business protectionism, and creating a separate legal system and separate protections for big rich people compared to the rest of society. No individual getting paid minimum wage could file a patent and actually get it approved and not knocked down. Arguably, there is also plenty of prior existence around the idea of coaching players who fall below a specific threshold. Games have been doing that for a very long time. That's not innovative. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Sledgehammer teases Call of Duty Vanguard updates coming soon, which I don't know if anybody really cares about Call of Duty Vanguard. Here you have a collection of quite a lot of female people with guns on the military lines. You'd have to do some historical research to know the time frame and determine which outfit is from which army. But yeah, Call of Duty pretty much shot themselves in the foot. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of realized that the Call of Duty fandom was done with the Call of Duty series 3 or 4 games ago, and so now they're doing some weird self-immolation, for lack of a better term, where they're setting themselves on fire by being extremely controversial and woke and making bad statements and bad products. It may very well be the equivalent of somebody who pisses everybody off at a party and then says, "Well, screw you guys, you're all ugly," or something like that. Like, people just turning a blind eye to the fact that they themselves ruined that relationship. Actually, I'm probably a little bit surprised there aren't more managers and companies out there that take the public and loud opinion that they're perfect and right and that all the customers suck. Almost certainly a lot of people think that, who run a lot of management thinks that as they run their business, but they have at least enough intelligence to not say it out loud.
I am such a genius.
Oops. That is not what I meant to do, but whatever. We'll go with it. Video Games Chronicles has the PlayStation 2 announcement also. They put out some tech specs, but seemingly have just like no pictures. There's going to be a Horizon VR game, which that smacks of potentially oversaturating the Horizon series. PSVR will be 4K HDR, 110 degree field of view visuals, with field of view aided, I don't know what field of view aided rendering means. Probably means things on the edges are blurrier than things in the center of your view. I think one of the problems here, when you look at those specs, is that you really would want Sony proper to be making a VR headset that works with the PlayStation versus Sony Entertainment Interactive, SEI, the Sony of California as I call it, making a VR headset. Because if Sony proper came out with a 4K HDR 110 field of view headset that you could plug into HDMI and watch Sony Blu-ray movies, and it came as like an accessory to TVs, and it was cross-promoting the idea of buying a TV, that makes a lot more sense to me. But if you're locking it behind the fact that you have to have a PlayStation 5 to really run the thing because there's so much hardware and computational processing that's actually happening on the PlayStation 5's end, well, you've limited your audience considerably. And that gets back to the TCL monitor glasses that just look like a pair of sunglasses Of course, that's a prototype. They may be a lot heavier and bigger when they actually come out, but that would, like, I think you could accomplish a lot more that way.
You have summoned the blade of
Plus, you could
purgation here.
upsell quite a bit in that case, because you're getting people who are buying high-end, a high-end headset, VR headset,
Don't forget to snag some merch.
when very possibly all they would have wanted to buy is just the monitor without the motion tracking, without the high-end upsells.
The unknown lies beyond the clouds.
Let's see. The first PlayStation VR 2 game, which 2 pretty much means we could now look at all the entire list of PlayStation VR 1 games and compare them all and see which ones were good, because there's highly unlikely to be too many more PlayStation VR 1s. But it's the Horizon Call of the Mountain game, and here you have a trailer where the guy is just talking directly to the screen. I don't know why he's in profile. Just face the screen directly, just unless he's got like a mole or something on his ear he doesn't want people to see. Honestly, this shot is just kind of framed terribly anyways. Like, we don't need to see his ridiculous logo. We don't need to see a tuft of hair coming out of his t-shirt. Yeah, and that was the vast majority of this trailer. So it's just going to be like a first-person perspective, probably on rails, walking simulator without the walking element. Yeah, and that's all they have to show. Yeah, but let's talk about this shot, though. It's not video game related, but seriously. You have a photographer show up, or a videographer show up, unless he's just filming it himself. And arguably, I would just reject this completely. You've got a fairly bald guy, so maybe you do something to de-emphasize that as much as possible. You're doing an odd twist and angle. He's got this huge gut. He's got this t-shirt. I would assume if a videographer is there, he showed up in something better than a t-shirt, a suit, a tie. So even if the videographer said, hey, I need you to wear my shirt because this looks awful, there's just no preparation or plotting here. It's a blacked out background, so I assume this is just green screen with black behind it, when there's no reason to have not chroma keyed this in and put some Horizon footage playing behind him, so it just looks visually more interesting. Or, you know, you just even a still image of an office to make it look like he's in an office would look better.
Deserves a precious death.
It really feels like there's been no effort at all put into this announcement. So why am I supposed to feel like that is any effort is put into the game at all? This logo here, it isn't much, but at the very least you could have chroma keyed the logo in the back and then he could have been standing behind it, or you could have put the logo on the sides so it would do something. It's like there was potentially a whole nother person may have been standing here and they chroma keyed him out. Like, it's a really, really bad shot. And Sony shouldn't need general nobodies like me to tell them that. It really should be that easy to see. Moving on, the Skull and Bones game has now lost its co-director. Ubisoft's long in development pirate game still remains out of sight 5 years after its reveal. Almost certainly it's in development hell or has been secretly cancelled. The year of the pirate never really happened. which is probably for the better.
More jewels,
Like,
more.
it really is just an example of people not knowing what gamers really want, and gamers sometimes not even knowing what gamers really want. Like, this definitely looks really pretty for a trailer, but it's just Assassin's Creed Black Flag concepts that work fine as a minigame. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the concepts in this get added to an Assassin's Creed game in the future as a side game, as a mini game. But there is no... I would heavily suspect there won't be an actual game ever called Skull and Bones that comes out.
Accept harmony.
I'll see you in
Okay.
purgatory.
Okay, that doesn't work. Yeah, if I killed that one instead, then he probably would have had to use that. Video Games Chronicle says Activision is officially suing a popular Call of Duty cheat creator. A lot of Video Games Chronicle news today. Like, they're back in the office. Ghost of Tsushima has sold now 8 million copies. I guess we're finally back to work now. The Forza Horizon Playground Games has lost its co-founder. So more people either moving on. Fable, he was also a Fable developer. I almost wonder if he would... No. I mean, the only thing is, if he's going anywhere to work on something like Fable, he'd be going to Lion's Head Studios to make something not called Fable, but maybe like Fable, with... but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these people are just straight up retiring or being kicked out in shame. I wouldn't really be surprised if we're starting to see the Great Resignation also affect video games as an industry, because even though video game programmers and developers tend to be fairly well paid, unlike, say, McDonald's burger flippers, the amount of overwork and BS that you put up with, specifically in game development, has always been very high, and it's just becoming more and more obvious that that's the case. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see game developers, even upper management game developers, just saying, you know what, I'll just retire. I have enough money. There's no reason to stick into this rat race and try to make one more game.
Powerlessness outweighs power.
Let's see. Target will reportedly be selling PlayStation 5 consoles this week. According to Video Games Chronicles. Sony has released an extended plane fight sequence for the Uncharted movie. I don't see why you'd want to really spoil yourself on the movie that much, though. Naughty Dog says it's working on multiple game projects. Well, almost certainly, I'd assume it's The Last of Us 3, another Uncharted, potentially another Jak and Dax, but I suspect maybe not. Maybe another Crash Bandicoot. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if it's just these two and then 2 new things. Like, they kind of have to make something that's Uncharted. Well, even if it's not this character and it's more focused around this character or a different character. Like, I don't think you give up on the Uncharted series. I don't think Sony will let them give up on the Uncharted series. The studio is saying it's dying to share details. And then Rainbow Six Extraction is coming to Xbox and PC Game Pass at launch, which Rainbow Six Extraction is kind of the zombie game, I believe, in the Rainbow Six universe, which doesn't, I think, make a ton of sense. They really are just taking the entire Tom Clancy universe and dragging it into a completely different gameplay styles and completely different narratives.
If I turned tail and ran, I wouldn't be a dragon.
The Ubisoft Plus subscription service is officially coming to Xbox consoles at some point in the future, is the quote. And then Far Cry 6 Pagan Min DLC launches next week, which, that's weird, because that would mean you're bringing in the character from Far Cry 5, the bad guy. And it sounds like it's probably, no, he's from Far Cry 4, not 5. It kind of feels like you're basically just getting skins. This was the guy from Far Cry 6, was the one they really didn't like. Or at least mainstream video game journalists didn't like Far Cry 6 because it was a middle America cult leader, and they didn't insult middle America enough for the mainstream video game journalists, because they really wanted him to be just a slack-jawed, idiotic redneck. And when he came off as something even slightly intelligible, they flipped out. That would have been deep in the point where most SJWs, including mainstream video game journalists, were looking for every single piece of media to be an allegory against Trump for some reason. And I mean, just completely compromising their principles or the desire to see a different type of story told or a different narrative in favor of just all games having to be political and having to have the political ideology that they ascribe to.
Begin.
Let's see. I'm playing a lot of Shadowverse today compared to the past few weeks. Let's get through some of these new games now. We have one here called Start Move that it looks a little asset flippy. Unfortunately, these asset flip games are just getting better and better with every iteration. Yeah, this was the one we had already talked about and looked at, so that would have been our check to make sure I didn't miss any games. Here we have Endless Battlefield, which I think we can dismiss fairly easily as a free-to-play, single-player MMO online PvP game. Here we have a game called Tether, which looks uninteresting. It's $2.99 English only. Here we have a game called Skelter's Schism, which I don't think there's enough here. It's just kind of like this one screen, hacking and slashing, free to play, online PvP. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. Here we have a game called Steph's Revenge, which looks like garbage, 84 cents English only. Here we have Superstar Streets. I guess the good news is, even if there's a lot of news, we're still mostly getting garbage games, such as this, free to play, English third-party accounts. Here we have something called Army to Army, which, again, bad and expensive, and bundled together in a huge bundle for $118, $14.99 if you just want to buy that one game. Let's see. Destroy an ally, put a paradigm shift in it.
Perfect place
What
to
do we
land.
want to do here?
What potential does mankind have? Sleep. You're the defective ones. I will never forgive you.
So I guess this card is what you would want on the field.
As black as these
Because
skies.
then something that makes you draw cards and activate resonance would give you two.
You want the world?
It would give you
Then
2
come
play
and get it.
points.
Please don't throw me away. I don't think this is gonna win for us though. Have to do something like this. Then something like this. Speed boost. Accept harmony.
And then something like that.
Forget it. I'm done.
You're a fiery one.
Next we have Royal Legends Marsha's Curse Collected Edition, which is obviously a hidden object game. Not from Big Fish Games though. $13.99. English, allegedly full audio. I doubt that. Here we have Pixel Robot Return, which looks like garbage.
Your
$1.19. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Maze of Bears, which looks terrible. $4.19 English. Here we have Galactic Dreams, which looks terrible. $3.99 English full audio. Here we have a game called Theory of Poltaran, which is $9.99 English and allegedly full Russian language. I'm actually a little surprised I've managed to even get 2 ranked wins with this Portalcraft deck. Yeah, we have a Chinese game. It doesn't look as bad as a lot of the ones we just looked at, but it's going to be Chinese only, and it still kind of looks like a mobile game or a too simplistic RPG. $19.99 Chinese only. Here we have a game called Firing Vibes, which, yeah, doesn't look like much of anything, just a big mess of white shapes. Free to play, online PvP only. Here we have a game called F-Rank Hero Story, which sounds like a RPG Maker low effort game. It's early access, $8.99, allegedly several languages supported. Change all these out. Here we have a game called Alice Exclamation Point, which looks like a Plants vs. Zombies clone, kind of tower defense game. And I might have been willing to give it a chance if the visuals weren't kind of all over the place. Like this visuals here looks bad, and this is probably what you're looking at most of the time. This is its kind of own unique art style, so I won't just immediately call it bad. But then you have a different art style here, and then a different art style here that looks too pixely. So you're having like 4 or 5 different art styles, all depicted in the screenshots. And yeah, sometimes I'll see a game and the screenshots are just way too consistent and the game looks boring and repetitive, but in this case they've gone in the other direction. $9.99 English, Japanese, and Korean. They are comparing it to Plants vs. Zombies, which is definitely how I would compare it also. here we have a game on Steam called Wrong Train, which seems like it's probably a horror asset flip game. You just sit on a train, and we haven't seen too much of that before.
You don't know when to quit.
Like waking up on a train could definitely be an interesting idea, or starting of a story where there's just nobody on this train. It ends at some station you don't recognize, and then all of a sudden you're in this whole different world that is foreign and weird. But then you look down here and it says the train is really endless. Items on the train have random generation. Items and monsters at stations also have random generation. So like there isn't an actual full game there by most people's definition. I got a quick disconnect victory.
Sleep enveloped in serenity.
Which means we have now managed to get some of the things done. So now it would just be play Dragoncraft or get to a private match, and we'll do private matches later. So do I want to make a Dragoncraft game deck here, or do I want to just try this? Just try this. Alright, so Gamatsu has the final PlayStation Now article also. The Xbox Games Pass article also, so we don't really need to cover it twice. The Death Stranding coming to PC in spring also. They also say Genshin Impact version 2.4 update is now available. I think there's more controversy again of one of the Genshin Impact characters being censored, maybe in the Chinese version of Genshin Impact. It does seem to be very consistent. Gamatsu has the same article with the PlayStation VR 2 and Horizon Call of the Mountain. So yeah, everybody was really hoping to make an announcement, to have news to report. Yeah, in a lot of ways I wouldn't be surprised if these video game news sites had nothing to do for a couple of days and were just itching for a press release to come out. Although I imagine it wouldn't be too hard to keep yourself busy if you wanted to. Gamatsu has the same article. Ghost of Tsushima sales top 8 million. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity shipments and digital sales have topped 4 million, which I would say that's pretty good considering it's a Warriors game. Really, to the Westerners, it's just a kind of weird spin-off game, and to the Easterners, it's still going to be kind of a weird spin-off game because it's not set in the main story narrative line. Famitsu has its review scores for issue 1727, giving Astroneer 28 out of 40. That is really low. And Hell Let Loose 31 out of 40, which is still pretty low. Let's see. The game Babylon's Fall has gone gold, which, if anything, I think that probably puts a nail in the coffin as to what Babylon's Fall really could have been. Like, it definitely feels like it is just a standard Asian MMO game that is for some reason desperately trying to advertise to the Western audience and trying to get much more of a reception than you normally would get from some just general MMO. And I guess at a certain point, if you're going to make a game like that, you really do want to try and be the next World of Warcraft. Particularly right now, it would make a lot of sense to try and get the audience, or to be a MMO that feels more like Dark Souls. Like those ideas certainly would be what you'd want to try and shoot for. I just don't know if you're ever going to succeed at that, because at a certain point,
Here to plunder and
a lot of the
pillage.
Westerners who would have been playing World of Warcraft 10 years ago have moved over to Destiny and more first-person shooting mechanics instead of hack and slash sword mechanics. I just don't think hack and slash sword mechanics are ever going to be popular in the West. Plus, if you really were going to go with hack and slash sword mechanics, I still don't know why you wouldn't be trying something like Final Fantasy 14, I think, is the MMO Final Fantasy. And maybe that's the whole case here, is that they know this isn't going to sell that well, so they're rushing the game out. I wouldn't be surprised if Babylon's Fall is actually pretty poorly received. Like, you've got to have some losers every year, so I would definitely... Like, that's a more interesting beginning of the year or end of the year conversation to have, is to, instead of picking your winners, pick the losers. You'll have a higher chance of success that way. Make your controversial statements when you say, oh, I don't think Babylon Falls is going to succeed, or I don't think Elden Ring is going to succeed. There's a decent chance that Elden Ring, if it comes out this year at all, will fail. I'm not 100% sure that even Halo is going to succeed.
Life upon the land.
There's a lot more where that
And it's very easy to find some metric to agree with the idea that something failed.
Not cool.
It's definitely a negative perspective, but mainstream video game journalism is so propagandistic about making everything look positive. A little bit of negativity probably would help.
Resolution in my right hand. Might in my
Moving on, Nin Days 2 for PC launches January 21st. It's currently available for Switch. Is it a visual novel? Yes, it is. It's a romance visual novel. You have a ninja girl with different eye colors playing some kind of video game console. Let's see. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk Move Style teaser and trailer screenshots. This is the spiritual successor to the skateboarding graffitiing game, which I was pretty hyped on this game when it first was announced, and I don't think I need to be particularly more hyped on this game. I'm not that hyped, clearly, because I don't remember the actual name of the game that it's a spiritual successor to. It was one of the Dreamcast games that were very popular. One thing you can say about the Dreamcast is either because of Stockholm Syndrome or just through a really good collection of launch games, a lot of nostalgia exists. Let's see. Seems like you can also skateboard in BMX on top of inline skating, so Bomb Rush Cyberpunk potentially is going to be a more ambitious game with 3 different mechanics. Hopefully that doesn't mean it's 3 very badly controlling mechanics. Elite Beat Agents. I don't think it's the name of the game. I thought for a second it might be, but yeah, I can't even remember the name of it. I'll remember it like 2 days from now, definitely. But moving on, we have a game on Steam here, another Argonauts resource management game, Argonauts Agency Glove of Midas, $3.59, English, French, German, and Russian. Yeah, we have a game called Shining Blade, which looks like nothing. $1.99. He doesn't even have like thumbnails for his posts. English only. Here we have a game called Slaughter Cannon, which looks too asset flippy for its own good. Looks kind of like a mobile game. Probably wouldn't work too bad as a mobile game where you're just controlling a cannon and then you're bringing in items with 3D physics to them to try and just destroy. But it's too simplistic of a concept to really need to be played on a console or a PC. It is basically Angry Birds, just in a different skin. $5.69 English and Russian. It's not a terrible Angry Birds clone though. Here we have a game called An Outcry that doesn't look visually polished enough to interest me. $10.79 English and French. Here we have TKIUM or TKIUM Exclusion Area, which just suffers from dark screenshot syndrome and looks like there's really no game there. $2.99 English only. Smart Factory Tycoon Beginnings. Don't think I would want to cover this, but I'm going to give it a follow to think about it. Looks like there might be some programming elements to this, although I don't know if I really want to play a factory game with programming. I'm not sure there's enough time to potentially play a programming game and a factory management game in one game. This is also, I guess, free to play and just a demo for the main game, so I'll not put it on the fall list for that reason. Almost done with the news. Once again.
I live by the sword.
Maybe I just have more energy because I've automated everything at the beginning instead of spending like 20 minutes looking at the computer, reading, and thinking before I even hit the record button or the stream button. That may be the case. Let's see. Komatsu has an article here that says Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Extraction is coming to Xbox Game Pass on day one, and Ubisoft Plus is coming to Xbox. That's basically the same articles we've already covered. The Elder Scrolls Online Global Event Reveal 2020 is set for January 27th, which I kind of forget that the Elder Scrolls Online even exists and that people are still playing it. I kind of would also like to see Microsoft now owning ZeniMax and Bethesda to potentially start to de-emphasize the Elder Scrolls Online, because anything that is new to Elder Scrolls Online is going to probably need to be put into the next Elder Scrolls game, the Skyrim sequel, which is very, very late. And if they don't have a good backup plan in case Starfield doesn't sell as well, then Bethesda is just going to be dead in the water. Like, ZeniMax and Bethesda's plan right now is to have Fallout 76 give them a little bit of money, Elder Scrolls Online give them a little bit of money, and then hope that Starfield succeeds. If Starfield fails and there's never another Starfield series, they need to go back to Elder Scrolls at that point and make Skyrim 2, and it needs to be way better than Skyrim 1 because that's a 10-year-old game plus. And no more remakes, no more let's make a marketplace to sell mods, no more of that nonsense that just causes controversy and barely is making them money. Like, Microsoft doesn't need more controversies. Moving on, River City Girls for PlayStation 5 launches January 18th. This is a little bit more pixely than I thought River City Girls looked like, but whatever. This would be River City Girls 1 also. It's a free upgrade for existing owners. Well, they've announced River City Girls 2. A game called Nobody Saves the World launches January 18th for PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. It's also available via Game Pass, which looks like it might be a top-down beat-em-up game, but it does have some kind of unique-looking visuals there. Let's see. Yeah, seems like it's kind of a more trolly, jokey game with its characters. Looks interesting. Perhaps it's more of a dungeon crawler than just a top-down twin-stick shooter that goes on forever. That could add some value. A game called Valis, the Phantasm Soldier Collector's English Physical Edition. Pre-orders open up on January 7th from Limited Run Games. What's interesting here is you have what clearly would have been the Western advertisement and cover versus the original Japanese cover here. You have a blue-haired anime girl in gold. It's about the same idea, but it's almost as if somebody just gave a verbal description of what to show and then had a Dungeons and Dragons style artist draw a fantasy element on it. Because yeah, you're very far off in the difference there. As for what the actual game looks like, that's the interesting thing. Apparently it also comes with some vinyl records, which I imagine when this game originally came out there were some vinyl records that came with it. Yeah, the actual game though, you just see these little screenshots here, and that's it. So it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of real flash to show as far as the actual game. Which that's believable, certainly. We have a game here called Bridge to Another World Christmas Flight Collector's Edition, which is from Big Fish Games as a hidden object game. $12.59, English only. I believe at this point I could be playing Dragoncraft unranked, so I should do that. We'll say I probably there is a small chance, or even a decent chance, that I'm not going to get around to doing the solo gameplay. I just don't think I'm going to prioritize it enough. So I may just miss out on all those cards. Otherwise, I'm going to have to play for take a special day just to play the solo stuff, when really I should be making more Fallout 3 content. There might be a slight argument to finish the main story in Fallout 3 and then maybe take a break before doing the DLC, but I don't think I agree with that thought. I think that would just kill momentum and potentially have me not finish the whole game. Here we have a game on Steam called Herodonia, which obviously is just a low polygon horror game. $7.99 English, Portuguese, Brazil. We have about, I'd say, 20 tabs, and half of those are video games, gamedeveloper.com tabs, which we could go through very fast. Here we have a game called Virus, which this is a fall. Well, I would have thought this was a fall list game, but it's not even on the fall list. But yeah. Let me just reload this page and double check. Yeah. don't know what happened there. I almost wonder if they are shifting some of the links, some of these app IDs to reuse them after a while. And so sometimes when I have something on the follow list and I click on it, it just takes me to a totally different game instead of taking me to the default Steam store. Like, here we have a game called Big Booty Adventures, which is a pirate game. And most people, I think, would assume that Big Booty Adventures is a name for a porno. It's early access and doesn't look interesting. It's a VR game for $8.99. Recontextualizing and looking at it as a VR game, it still doesn't really look that interesting. Here we have a game called Karma Knight, which doesn't quite grab my attention, because it does seem like there may be some level up elements, but it seems like you're mostly just hacking and slashing and doing a very minimal platforming. It's very zoomed in. Yeah, this feels too much like a frustration platformer for my taste. So I'm gonna have to say no to this. And remove that from the follow list. So those two games were a follow list.
I knew it.
Here we have an adult game called Kara Kara 2. So let me make sure everything is YouTube
Victory
family
is
friendly.
exhilarating.
The question on adult games, I think at this point, paying $9.99, double the price to get a uncensor for a adult visual novel game is too much, even if it's rated very positively. So I'm going to say no and remove this from the follow list. I'm also going to see if Kara Kara 1 is on a wish list. Yeah, it is. And I'm going to remove it from the wish list. Because, yeah, that is definitely asking too much. I got a quick disconnect, so if we could just get a couple more of those, that'd be great. This game needs more time, since it basically just came out. Although I don't know why this is on the follow list at all. Guess it's not even out yet.
Bow before Dark Dragoon.
I must have
ruler of
just
the
clicked it
skies.
on accident.
Have you heard the music of the fairies?
Let's go ahead and remove that until it actually releases. This game doesn't have any relevancy, so it's gotta go. And we did once again transition into just follow list cleanup games without the page staying open. I was trying to stop that from happening, but didn't seem to really work. What I should do is I should just put the games we're going to talk about in between gamedeveloper.com, and then as long as there's at least one gamedeveloper.com article, that'll be the marker to know when we've hit the follow list cleanup. Yeah, this Komodo Steve janitor on fire, it's gotta go too. Here we have Camille the Fall.
Quit while you're ahead, loser.
VR game, mostly positive, came out March 22. I'm gonna give this a little bit more time, but I would suspect that this probably doesn't need to be on the follow list. Now would be as good a time as any to potentially give up on VR in general and just say no more. This blend game needs more time. And then this Kaisuyo. It has enough relevancy. Is it early access? No, it's just a VR game. That's why it's on the follow list. Kaku Ancient Seal Alpha has been in early access since November as an alpha. It's mixed reviewed. I don't think there's any reason to follow this. When you have 80 people and 66% of it like it, that's too low. This Kenga Seeds of Civilization is rated very positively, but still early access, so we'll keep that. And then Knife Fight doesn't have any relevancy as a joke fighting game between two knives, so we'll get rid of that. And that has worked out very nicely now because we are now very consistently doing follow list for now. If anything, I might just need to straight up turn the number down instead of looking at 10 games each stream. We might really only need to do 3 or 4, maybe 5 games, just to maintain it, because if we go all the way through the follow list and we're looping through the follow list because there's like 300 and we go through it, that would be 30 times a week. 30 times 52 weeks would be 150. It would take us 2 years to go all the way around it at 10. So maybe it should be 20, just so that we know we've done one full loop throughout the year. Is that particularly fair? It's somewhat fair, but not amazingly fair. There's probably a better, more complicated system there. And then GameDeveloper.com says, learn how Deathloop created its mind-blowing opening chapter through UX, user experience, which I don't think I really care at all about Deathloop and whatever they would have to say in an article. I did hear one argument for Deathloop that kind of makes sense, is if you played Dishonored and you didn't like the fact that you had to play it as a stealth game because you got the bad ending, and you would cause the plague to expand more if you played it at a high visibility, high aggression style. Deathloop at least allows you to do that because there aren't any consequences outside of a region, so it definitely is built around the idea of more running up to somebody and shooting them in the face versus poisoning them and then escaping the room without being seen. They have the winners of the Steam Awards at GameDeveloper.com. I think it pretty much already covered all of this. Game of the Year, Resident Evil Village, Cooking Simulator VR, Battle with Friends, It Takes Two, Labor of Love Terraria, Outstanding Visual Styles, Forza Horizon 5, Most Innovative Loop, Gameplay is Deathloop, Best Game You Suck At is Neo, the Complete Edition, Best Soundtrack is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Outstanding Story is Story-Rich Game is Cyberpunk 2077, and Sit Back and Relax is Farming Simulator. The thing I would want to check here, though, is we do this, go here, and then click this, and then hold down Control and click the uBlock Origin so it doesn't actually block ads on specifically the homepage of Steam, which I just figured that out, and that's really helpful.
shall go to even greater heights.
Quit while you're ahead, loser.
My
My
lord.
blade is autumn. I am the fallen leaf.
Let's see.
Like a fallen leaf.
Not news. We want the blog.
Crescendo.
Support.
Get out of my forest already. Hey, let's play.
How do we find the Steam blog? Well, they really aren't making it easy. I guess it has to be under news. And then Steam official. That's what you have to do. You have to go to news and then Steam official and then the best of 2021. By the way, the sale is over. So, what they covered here is the top sellers of 2021. And you may notice that a specific amount of them are very recognizable games that really didn't come out in 2021. So everybody, I mean, 2021 was a terrible year for new video games, so it's no surprise the best sellers would be things from previous years. Still seeing a lot of Black Desert Online and Euro Truck Simulator type games. Cyberpunk somehow still being a best-selling game. Team Fortress 2 being free to play. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Binding of Isaac Rebirth making big sales numbers still. Arguably one of the least respected games for as much as it sells. Skyrim's selling a lot. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a free-to-play game selling a lot.
Those acorns flying out of the woods.
Bloons Tower Defense 6, Near Replicant, another game that I think more people should play. The Halo Master Chief Collection, obviously. DayZ still selling. NBA 2K still selling. Smite with tie-in things. Fallout 4 even selling fairly well. Borderlands 3 selling fairly well. So yeah, even Fallout 76. It's kind of ridiculous that
So sparkly.
Fallout 76 isn't a free-to-play game. It just kind of have this weird
Victory is a testament to your
way. It
strength.
seems like you could actually play it as a single-player game if you so choose. Then when you look at specific new games, you start to see a slightly different picture. Like the mixed reviewed Back 4 Blood. A couple of days ago, the number 16 trending game in the category of gaming videos on YouTube was a video that said Valve was supporting, or it said something along the lines of Valve was the only one that made Left 4 Dead succeed, because it's just like video comparisons, no commentary. And this is once again the suckiness of YouTube, is that one of the most successful videos of the day is literally a no commentary video in which they are playing devlog audios from Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, the development commentary, and then they're showing video of what the development commentary is talking about in Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, and then they're showing how in Back 4 Blood that stuff is missing. But yeah, Back 4 Blood, pretty awful game. And one of the things that I think is most surprising is at the end of the video, they sold Back 4 Blood as if it was from the creators of Left 4 Dead, and then they showed the entire credits of everybody who worked on Left 4 Dead, of which there was probably about 40-45 people, and then they highlighted 5 names that actually worked on Back 4 Blood, and everybody else is still just working at Valve. Now, in all fairness, Valve didn't make a competitor. They didn't make Left 4 Dead 3, so they left themselves open to let a small splinter group of people who worked on Left 4 Dead to go start a new company and make another game. So it really is Valve's fault that Back 4 Blood exists and that it was ever talked about in the first place. But yeah, as far as new games, looking at that, there's not a lot to talk about. Rust, New World, still getting a lot of most play time. Among Us getting a lot of play time. Rocket League getting a lot of play time, even though I don't think it's even purchasable on Steam anymore. Here you have a JRPG, Tales of Arise, getting a lot of playtime, which would make sense. Binding of Isaac getting a lot of playtime. Cookie Clicker getting a lot of playtime. Are we really going to see anything slightly surprising? I'm a little surprised that people are still playing Evil Genius 2, because I didn't think it was that well received. I don't know if I recognize this Gunfire Reborn game. One of the things that The Witcher 3 does really nice is the shoulder over shoulder visual effects when you're having a conversation that's totally missing in Fallout 3. Like, whenever you talk to somebody, you just look at the person you're talking to from a front-facing perspective, and you never see your own character. His lips or her lips never move. I hope Fallout 4 adjusts that better. But then it really highlights the idea, this Eternal Return I've never heard of. It's a free-to-play game. It highlights the idea of why does Fallout 3 have a custom generation game? Raft is still getting new content. It's still kind of in early access. Yep. New Genesis, some free-to-play game. Best of VR includes the Waifu Simulator VR game, and then Beat Saber and some normal things. I think there might very well be a patch to turn that Waifu Simulator, Girlfriend Simulator, to be a little bit more lewd. VR Hot, I assume, is also adult content VR game, which porn in VR is probably the thing that is going to succeed more than anything else. But pretty much everything as far as Best of VR is a game that did not come out in 2021. And clearly VR suffered even more than the rest of the game industry because of the pandemic and just a lack of interest. Even if it was going to be a scenario where more people bought VR headsets, they are buying the older games. Here is a list of games that came out of early access, which it'd be kind of nice if you could get a running list of things that came out of early access as a way of saying, hey, let's check this game out. Fear Surrounds is not a game I recognize. College Kings obviously is another adult game, and yeah, it's one of more of the Western adult games. First Class Trouble is just an Among Us clone. It came out of early access. Controller friendly at this point really doesn't even need to be a category. Very few games come out on PC and Steam that can't at the very least control with a controller. It's kind of funny, Titan Souls for instance here. It's a pretty old game to be a bestseller because of the subcategory of being controller friendly. I don't think there's like really any major editorialization going on here. I think they literally probably did just take their best top selling numbers. Yeah, and there aren't any more categories there, so no big surprises really. Raft here, still early access, and it will be kind of hard to play this in single player, but I definitely do feel like I want to play Raft. Playing Raft is a lot like playing Minecraft in the sense that you play one of them and then you don't need to play that many more. I don't even know if this is the same Raft game or if there's a different Raft game, because the visuals have changed, it looks like, so much that it's almost a different art style now. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually a completely different game that is like Raft, that has just a different name to it. But yeah, that is very, very different from what this game was a couple years ago. This Fear Surrounds as a multiplayer or co-op game that also looks like it might have some adult models in it. Adult imagery. Looks kind of interesting. It's a werewolf style subterfuge genre. Evil spirits hide within a group and attempt to sabotage or murder them. $7.99 online PvP, English and Chinese. No adult content, which really makes me wonder then why do you have such a big busted character? Yeah, they're trying to sell on something that they're not actually offering. And then we have 5 gamedevelopers.com articles to cover. I'll have to play these private matches off screen and then try and get this, but it would make more sense to leave this reward for another day, get the private matches, and then start playing single player content, the solo content. Anyways, the Samsung Gaming Hub will bring game streaming to smart TVs, things like Stadia built into Samsung TVs, which honestly at this point the TVs should have fast enough chips in them anyways so that they can change the channels and run any effects. That the idea of turning those basically cell phone chips that are running the TVs back into basically cell phone chips so they can stream Stadia gaming and do the input is a great idea. That is the one way in which I could see Stadia actually becoming something that people care about, is if all of a sudden you've installed 5 Samsung TVs throughout your house, then you've got 5 gaming consoles for 5 different people instead of potentially having to buy 5 Xboxes or 5 PlayStations and a TV for each one of them. GameDeveloper.com has the same article, blockchain games to become a major strategic theme for Square Enix. Amazon Luna general manager Gabi Knight has departed for Unity. So he was the second high profile member of the Luna team to depart in the past year. Which, yeah, I don't think Amazon's gaming ambitions are going to be successful at this point. Then GameDeveloper.com has the same article about PlayStation VR, which nobody seems to have any pictures of the hardware at all. And then the same article that Ghost of Tsushima's topped 8 million studios. And then the studio head departs Forza Horizon and Fable development, Playground Games, which we had already talked about that too. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm wearing out my voice, so now is kind of a great time to also wrap up this stream. And let's see. Let's just cover. Let me just scroll down my Twitter feed and cover any new news that has happened in the past 2.5 hours. Yeah, it definitely feels like now that news is starting to happening, we will get back to 2.5 to 4 hour streams. The indie gameplay platform GameJolt has been taken to task for its porn game ban. Just straight up, they said no adult games. Like the National Video Game Museum is back to tweeting. They haven't tweeted in a very long time. They've got new items in their gift shop. I guess they probably didn't have a lot to do or say. And they are just a museum, and particularly in the middle of a pandemic when they're probably underfunded, they probably don't have that much to say. There's a Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga Boba Fett video. Yeah, it looks nice and shiny for a Lego game. I'm just hoping the new engine makes it consistently run better. Although, in all fairness, I've fixed 99.9% of all the micro-stuttering issues in Lego games, and so I am now back to the idea of finishing the last couple of Lego games I haven't covered. Yeah, assuming my Twitter feed is actually linear, then I think I've seen everything that's new. So yeah, we can look here. The indie games hosting site GameJolt has caused a stir on game dev social media with a sudden about face with its adult content policies. Yeah, last I heard they had just outright banned them. Yeah, so what actually happened? There's like 2 paragraphs here just establishing what's happened with like the porn apocalypse of Tumblr and sorta OnlyFans for a brief second. GameJolt over the past few days has caused a stir on social media with an abrupt ban on games with adult content, then a ham-fisted manner in which it announced and justified the sudden move to its user base. So yeah, they made a bad announcement, certainly, and people didn't like it. I don't know how many people were actually playing games on GameJolt, though, considering this is the first I've ever even heard of them. So it's probably not that big of a deal. It's just a good canary in the coal mine situation to show how there is a fan base out there, particularly for indie games. I imagine if you are making an indie game, one of the things about being indie is to not be under the thumb and control of a publisher to make a game that appeals to everyone and has to be family friendly. So if an entire platform that hosts indie games is all of a sudden saying everything has to appeal to everyone and be family friendly, that's kind of a problem. And here's the picture of I think these are puzzles. Dragon's Lair tribute puzzle, which looks like it's an actual picture of the museum. And then a head-to-head mural puzzle. So more than likely, the video game museum feels like they are safe from copyright claims to use all of these characters because it is a big collection of characters and selling them as a product, or maybe they actually did get the license for each of these characters. This mural, for instance, probably has a much better claim of being transformative compared to just this puzzle here, but I suppose that they feel they won't get sued, and they probably won't. But it would be very interesting to all of a sudden find out that that's not the case. There is a slight difference, I would assume, being a museum. There's a difference between showing off a product you own and then taking the product you own off the pedestal and making a new product using that imagery. Well, anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.